So let's recap what's been happening. The government, as well as the mainstream media, who really helped push this propaganda, make this propaganda mainstream, is really trying to push the idea that the mentally ill are potentially violent, right? They're trying to connect the two and to associate massive violence with mental illness, right? So they're stigmatizing the mentally ill, which is going to lead to mistreatment of people who are deemed mentally ill, which is a shame because, first of all, there are, most people who do have mental illness are wonderful people. They're not violent. They would never act out violently. But also because a lot of people are being labeled mentally ill when they're not. Okay? The second part of this, people who claim that they're being followed and stalked are deemed mentally ill, right? When the belief that you're being followed is considered a mental illness, or, signs of paranoia and delusion, how do you prove that you're actually being followed when you are, right? You don't. You don't. And there are only two groups of people who promote this propaganda, okay? One are the criminals who want to continue getting away with their crimes, and two are the pathologically stupid, the imbeciles, right? Useful idiots for the criminals. These are the two groups who keep pushing out this propaganda. So, if we're talking about actual stalking, forget gang stalking for a minute. Let's just talk about normal stalking. That is an insidious and horrible crime, okay? It's meant to traumatize the victim long before he or she is actually physically assaulted. It's sickening. The person being stalked is going to be driven to break down and therefore appear mentally ill. So what do the red flag laws do? They prevent the actual victims from being able to protect themselves. While the criminals, they can have all the weapons they want, right? The criminals are left armed and dangerous. Consider stalking, even without the gang stalking aspect, even without the Zerzetzung aspect, right? Consider, and let's go back and think about what it was like maybe 50 years ago before modern technology. It was bad enough then, right? Maybe someone would follow a woman home and, leave a note on her door that he can see her or something like that. Or worse, he could get into her apartment and leave a note on her bed that he could see her, just to psychologically break her, right? To create terror. It's an insidious crime. It's even worse than physical assault because it is the destruction of a person psychologically and emotionally before the physical assault. Now with modern technology, that's even worse, right? Someone could hack your camera, hack your microphone, and give you a play-by-play description of what you're wearing, what you're doing, what you're saying, what you're eating, and so on. It's terrifying. But if you can't prove it, right? If you can't say I'm being followed without that very statement triggering these supposed professionals into shouting mental illness, well, now what do you do? What the hell do you do? You have to watch your language, and I don't mean don't curse. I mean, you have to think very carefully about the words you use to describe what's happening because, mental health professionals, and they're trained and conditioned to look for certain words and certain phrases and certain behaviors, and they associate that with they're trained to associate that with certain types of illnesses, including mental illness. So what they rarely do is take each individual patient as he or she is, instead of lumping the patient into the hive with everybody else, right? They're not going to analyze the patient on an individual basis. They're looking for his or her language to fit some criteria in their book, okay? So that they can mark down, oh yeah, it must be this or it must be that. They're not gonna, it's kind of like an equation with a lot of variables, right? If you leave out even just one variable, you're going to come to the wrong solution, right? Or add one that isn't there, and again, you come to the wrong solution. The only way to solve that equation is to include all of the variables, but they don't do that. They overlook a lot in order to come to the conclusion that they think is correct based on what they're reading, based on the diagnoses in their book, right? So they'll block out things. They'll block things out, and they'll. It's kind of like trying to shove a square peg into a round hole, right? they're going to try to make the patient's illness fit the diagnosis instead of coming, instead of concluding on a diagnosis that is actually accurate based on the symptoms. So they reverse what should be done anyway. So it's hard enough, right? So mental illness, first of all, is now being associated with extreme acts of violence. The government had pumped out that propaganda, and the media helped them. The media just pushed that out there and just did not shut up about it. They just kept going on and on and on, and so now these two things are associated. Either they're in the minds of the masses, right? And then we've got the belief that you're being followed, which they're also taught. These people are also taught to believe is a mental illness, right? To associate with mental illness. So now you can't talk about abuses that are being committed against you if you're being stalked or followed without also being deemed mentally ill. So now enter the red flag laws, which would, all it would take is, someone's word that you're unstable, that you could be mentally ill, and you lose your right to defend yourself, right? Whether it's a weapon or anything else. But see, it's worse than that. It's not just that you would lose your right to own a gun, okay? It's that once it's documented that you're mentally ill, these documents are shown. This is governmental, right? Doctors, law enforcement, everybody has access to that. It's a governmental file. So you go for help to law enforcement, they're not going to help you. They're going to look at your file. They're going to see the big paranoid, check, and they're going to think, oh, you're not being followed, you're just paranoid. So not only can you not protect yourself, you're not going to get help from law enforcement either. So these red flag laws would actually end up endangering the lives of victims of stalking, because they're making it impossible for us to explain what's happening. And it's so hard to prove. If you're being outright physically beaten and you have the scars, that's easier to prove than the insidious nature of stalking, where a victim has to literally spend his or her entire life 24/7 trying to get the evidence. For example, when it comes to the noise harassment, and I would tell someone, and they would say, one woman, actually a security guard, she looked me right in the eye and said, do you see things and hear things that other people don't see and hear? And part of that was due to because someone had followed me around wearing my exact same clothing literally for days. This guy had been following me wearing exactly what I was wearing. This is just a sick. So she says, do you see things other people can't see? And because I didn't record him, how could I prove it? Then they tried the same thing with the noise harassment, the constant tapping, tapping in the middle of the night, wherever. Even when I go out, they'll follow me around and tap. Do you hear things that other people can't hear? Is what I got, until I started recording it. And then I showed them, well, here, do you hear it too? Yeah. See, that's what you have to do. And then, of course, if they can no longer, I'm going to assume schizophrenia might have been on their mind. It might have been what they were thinking. If you see things and hear things that other people can't see and hear, that might be a sign of schizophrenia, not just paranoid delusions. Paranoid delusions are a part of schizophrenia, obviously. Once they can no longer use that diagnosis, then they're just going to move on to the next, right? Well, someone's coming in my home when nobody's here and opening a window for us to find when we get back. Then the next question is going to be, do you ever lose time? Do you have moments where you just forget everything that happened during a specific time frame? So they're still going to be looking for mental illness in you, even though you've proved up before. It never matters. It's going to be one after another, one excuse, one false diagnosis, everything and anything except just accepting the fact, that this is actually happening. That they don't want to do. That's the one thing they won't do. And it's like, with people following you around, and, first they'll deny they're following you. And so you're going to be called paranoid and mentally ill for claiming people are following you. When they can no longer deny that they're following you, then they'll admit it. But then, they'll make an excuse to justify it. And they're still not going to admit the fact that they labeled you mentally ill for claiming you were being followed when they know you're being followed because they're doing it. Now they're just going to move on to the next excuse to justify it. And you know what the justification is probably going to be? Well, you're mentally ill. Therefore, we're keeping an eye on you. Again, the reason they're calling you mentally ill is for the belief that you're being followed. And they are following you. You know, if someone is following you around and, you know, in this program, they want to keep tabs on you. So they want to make sure they know what you're wearing and that everybody in the group knows what you're wearing. And so they can, you know, keep an eye on you. So they have actually people come and flash a camera at you, hold up a phone, you take your picture. You're going to see that, right? If someone is, let's just say someone is legitimately mentally ill, they're going to see that happening and they're going to become paranoid. Don't you think that's going to paranoid them even more? Make them even more paranoid? When they walk around and people are flashing their camera at them? Don't you think that if someone is already mentally ill, that's going to make them even more paranoid? And someone who's not already paranoid, don't you think they're going to wonder what the hell is going on? Why are all these people doing that? Because look, when it comes to those of you who are working for these psychopaths, it's not just one person. What you're being told to do, a lot of other people are being told to do. So a target for gang stalking, for example, they'll, you know, when they're out, people will follow them around flashing the camera at them. People will follow them around making certain gestures and certain comments. Some of the comments will reference things that they said or did in private. And I don't mean things that could be, you know, that anybody could say or do, common random things. No. Uncommon things, okay? You know, you slip in the bathroom and you know, I don't know, you slip in the bathtub and then you get up and you slip again on soap. Well, maybe, you know, when you're out on public transportation later that day, someone is going to come by and pretend to be talking on the phone, but look directly at you as he or she says, yeah, isn't it really crazy when people slip in the bathtub and then slip again on soap because they forgot to pick it up the first time? This is what they'll do, folks, to let you know that you can be seen and heard in private. But even those, you know, even if it's not that extreme, let's say you're told to follow someone who's mentally ill and could be a potential threat. First of all, if you're making sure that he can see you take his picture, don't you think that's going to create paranoia in someone? 2, ask yourself, if you're also told to make certain comments or to make certain gestures, what the hell purpose could that possibly have? How is that going to stop a potential threat? Okay, the psychopaths who hired you don't expect you to think, because the mind is prone to error, and you're going to justify what you've done, what you're continuing to do, right? What you're doing right now, and what you're going to continue to do in the future, because you're too. Once you realize, once it begins to seem like, hey, maybe this is wrong, you're going to be afraid to stop, because you're going to start realizing what you're up against and what you've gotten yourself involved in. So instead of accepting the truth, you're just going to lie to yourself to justify your continuation, to justify doing this. You're going to lie to yourself. And you're going to believe whatever lies the psychopaths tell you, because you want to believe those lies, because you need to self-justify. What they don't expect you to do is use your brain and think. You're trying to stop a potential threat. Well, how are you going to do that? By running up to someone and damn near and hitting them with a cart or pushing them as you go by. Don't you think that's going to provoke someone instead? You got to understand, it's not just you. Targets are bullied and harassed all day long. Okay? As soon as they walk out the door, someone flashes a camera at them. Okay? Down the street, someone, you know, riding a bike damn near hits them and then shouts at them for being in the way. Going into the store, someone is rude to them and shoves them and gives them a hard time. And then 2 other people come in and make a comment referencing something that they said or did in private. All right, you know, later someone comes and shouts in their face. Why? Because that person was told that this person, the target, is mentally ill, and you want to stop a threat, so shout them down? No. This person because the target gets shouted at all the time. At some point, he or she is going to snap. This is not meant to stop a potential threat. It's meant to create one. Okay, you got to consider what you're doing. Is this really going to stop a threat, or is it going to create one? And if you're dealing with someone who's already paranoid, don't you think that maybe this might make them even more paranoid because they see you doing it They know you're doing it, and they're meant to know. Okay, if you're told that, to get someone's picture, they're going to see you doing that. Even if you're not told to intentionally show them, but a lot of you are told to make it known to the target that you're following them. Maybe you're told that this is going to stop a potential threat, but all you're doing is creating more paranoia when he sees or she that he's being followed. Doesn't know why, because not one goddamn one of you will tell him what he did to deserve it. Doesn't know what he did, doesn't know who the hell you are, doesn't know how much danger he's in, if he's in danger, or she. And this is sick. It is perverse. Okay? What you're going to do is end up with a self-fulfilled expectation, because when the target does break down, you're going to see that breakdown, and then that's going to be proof to you that he or she really is as mentally ill or bad or violent as you were told. Don't be stupid. Okay? Do you understand what a self-fulfilled expectation is? Because that is your job. That is what you were told. You weren't told to do it, but that's what they want from you. Okay? It's a setup. It's entrapment. Drive a person crazy then. Just to then use their breakdown as justification for what you were doing all along. How sick and stupid does someone have to be to not understand the unreason in that? Or just provoke and attack until he does get angry. And then say, oh, see how bad he is? See how angry he is? Well, you know what? He didn't get any sleep the night before because there's tapping all night long. Then in the morning, as soon as he walks out, some witch in the elevator holds a camera up and takes his picture. Here we go, the fuck again. Then as soon as he leaves the building, he's got 2 Russian guys following him around. Okay, and I say Russian because for me, there are Russian people. It's usually Russian males, sometimes females too. But a lot of them are Russian. But we know our own government is involved in this, right? We know that. When you go to the police, they don't help you. They would rather, just deem you mentally ill. But they're told to do that, right? What about our intelligence agencies? Well, our intelligence agencies know damn well what this kind of attack, this kind of warfare is. They know what Zerzetzung is. I'm going to call it that because it's such a perfect reference. It's such a perfect name for this. Okay? They know what that is. And, the FBI, they've admitted that Russia is following us. Zerzetzung, it was the type of warfare used against anti-communists in East Germany when they were controlled by communists. Okay, this is, it was a Russian strategy, but now, American intelligence has picked up on it and they use it too. But the FBI has come out with the fact that Russia is a threat to us, is attacking the United States. Okay, they've admitted that. But as soon as an American citizen goes to the FBI and, and describes the kind of attack they're under, which is very, very Zerzetzung-like, the FBI instead would have them deemed mentally ill. Or we hear about, people being sent to a psychiatrist. And I posed this question before, but if they'll admit that Russia is attacking the United States, then why is it so goddamn fucking hard to believe that maybe individual citizens are also being attacked? Why? So even though there is a definite Russian presence here when it comes to this type of attack, we know our own government is involved. So where do we go? Who do we go to for help? This is bad, folks. This is really bad. These new red flag laws are going to make it harder for victims of these sick, perverse crimes to defend themselves. And they need to be able to defend themselves because law enforcement is not helping them. In fact, this is going to make it harder for victims to even speak up because they know they're going to be deemed mentally ill if they do. And once they're deemed mentally ill, not only will they be unable to defend themselves physically, again, they're going to be documented in their government file as mentally ill, so they won't be able to get help from anyone either. And so the criminals get away with their crimes. I'm not going to take political sides because there's shit on both ends, okay? But to the liberals who claim to be pro-human rights, right? They claim to be humanitarians. I'm a humanitarian as well, right? Maybe though, you should think about the consequences of these laws. These laws are being passed off as if they're going to help people, right? I was watching the news and it said, oh, well, it'll stop suicides and it'll stop, young men from shooting themselves and young women from being, followed by an abusive partner or whatever. No, what this is going to do is put those people in a situation where they're even more victimized. Especially those of you who claim to be for women's rights. If a woman is being stalked and she can't even fucking say she's being followed without being deemed mentally ill and thus being discredited that way, do you think maybe this is going to be the reverse of what you say you want? I mean, you say women's rights, you want to help them, you want to keep them safe, but these laws are going to hurt them. These laws are going to hurt them. So, I know a lot of you have good intent. You're good people, but you're acting stupid. Okay? Instead of just accepting the propaganda being shoved down your throat, please just take a step back and think about the potential consequences of this. Okay? You're linking mental illness with violence. You're deeming as mentally ill people who claim that they're being followed. And from there, you're red flagging them, which would take away their right to self-defense, at least with a weapon, and it would also discredit them to law enforcement agencies, so they're not going to get help from them either. Do you understand that? Not to mention, once someone is deemed mentally ill or and thus a potential threat, the two go hand in hand now because of the goddamn media who picked up on this and just wouldn't shut the hell up about it. They pumped out this propaganda. Well, if someone is deemed a threat, the population, the community, they're going to be warned, right? And they're going to treat that person differently. Some will be just rude. Some will be hostile. Some will be suspicious. Some might even be outright physically violent. Okay? And of course, the target is going to start breaking down at some point because no one is going to say anything to him or her about what the hell is going on. And someone is being lied about when they're not allowed a defense. Okay, when they're not allowed to speak on their own behalf or give a public, defense to whatever they're being accused of, they assume they're being lied about. And you're being told not to talk to them, right? Not to tell them what the hell is going on. They're going to break down and they're going to give you the response that you've been taught to expect from them. It is a self-fulfilled expectation. You are endangering their lives by going along with these laws. We must stand against them. Okay, we have got to stand against the red flag laws. This is not going to help people, folks. This is going to allow the worst criminals you could ever imagine, the most sadistic, perverse, subhuman vermin, the animals in human flesh, all the power they want. They're not going to lose their rights. Their victims are going to lose their rights and freedoms. The people that they're tormenting physically, emotionally, psychologically, they're the ones who are going to lose their rights and freedoms because of these laws. Right? For example, today when I walked out of the building, I got into, first of all, there was tapping all night, then there was tapping in the morning. I posted a video for the tapping, in the morning tapping anyway, just so people could hear it, and know that it's not just in my head. I've got to do that now. You got to prove it. Then I left. In the elevator, woman on her cell phone, she got out. Before she got out, she flicked her camera at me, looked back just a little bit, and left. So she took my picture. There was another woman, and when I got on, she was, she said, "Hello, sir," and okay, fine, she seemed nice. But then when we got off the elevator, she walked out quickly and then quickly turned back and walked right into me. And then she was kind of sarcastic and condescending. "Excuse me, sir." And the reverse of that, I know you ladies get this a lot. It's, this bitter, "Excuse me, ma'am," really bitter. Well, that's what she was like, but with the sir. And then she made a nasty comment about me, saying that I was walking too fast or, whatever. I was trying to move too fast, and she just wanted to get the elevator for someone else. It was a setup because if someone else came, it was a setup. So I leave the building, had to go to the store, walk in. This is where the Russian guys picked up. one with the typical red mask, and they'll follow me, sometimes waving a red string around, carrying a red string and waving it around, or they'll wear red shoes and a red mask and wave the red string around. And of course they'll do the nose rub. They'll pick their finger up to the nose and kind of rub the nose back and forth. Now, obviously, if one person does that, okay, it's not a big deal. They could have allergies, so the nose could have itched, right? But when so many people do this so many times all throughout the day, it begins to look like more. It's not just a coincidence. Well, the only reason I noticed them, I wouldn't have noticed them, but I walked in, and as soon as I walked in, they shouted really loudly behind me, and it startled me, so I turned around, and they were looking right at me, that Russian guy and another one with him. So then he was talking on his phone, right? Thick Russian accent. I guess, and I guess maybe they could be faking the accent. Maybe it's just our government trying to make it seem like it's Russia. I don't know. But these guys followed me, it's not like they trailed me trailed behind me at the store. No, but they would follow me, and like they would see what aisle I was going into, and then they would cut me off and come back from the other side in the aisle to meet me. And that just kept happening over and over and over again. And they would position themselves. I had my camera on one arm. I'm trying to find a way to be able to record. I need something where I can record, all around me, because now that they know that I'm recording, sometimes I still get the footage I need. But sometimes they'll, if they're really going to provoke, they're going to be they'll be behind me, or they'll be on the other side. It's frustrating. And they know what they're doing. They know what they're doing. And if you don't get the footage, then people say bullshit, right? Prove up. So they started pulling that crap. People would keep coming by me and just giving the nose rub or the nose tap, right? And eventually I did start shouting. I got so pissed off. I just said, get the away from me. Get the fuck away. Pathetic cowards. You're grown men. You're gathered in a massive group against a lone target that you don't believe can do anything to you. You don't believe a lone target can fight a group. It's pathetic. It's cowardly. Get the fuck away from me, vermin. I was a little too loud. And see, this is the point they want to get us to, where we really do start looking crazy and violent. Then that becomes a self-fulfilled expectation to those who were told to follow us on the grounds that we're crazy and violent. It's very circular. And I think different groups are gone to also and lied to. I think people are told whatever will make them most suspicious of the target. So I think the target could be called whatever, anything terrible, depending on the group that, the psychopaths want to recruit for this sick, perverse job. Anyway, I get in line, person standing behind me, I turn around, she gives the nose tap. So, I started, talking to the camera, to my camera, but, not quite to her, but loud enough for her to hear, this is COINTELPRO, it's MK Ultra, it's probably a combination of the both. Maybe you should do your damn research. Then on the way out, another woman gave the nose tap. They're told to, they're paid to, and we can't prove it. It sounds crazy. And this is why they say we're crazy and we're paranoid. It's meant to make us sound crazy when we complain about it, so that we can be labeled that and thus discredited, so that nobody takes us seriously and this crime can continue indefinitely. That's the point. But at least today, nobody referenced something that I said or did in private. They've done that too. Things I've said in the bathroom, things I've done in the bathroom, right? Things I've whispered to myself in the kitchen. They've come in and opened a window, and so that now I try to make it so that one of us, my mom or I, or either me or my mom, we're here at this. One of us has to be here. But if that's not possible, someone will come in and open a window, so we'll find it when we get back, or they'll move something around. It's hard to prove. How can we prove it? Put cameras up, they fuck with those. I once had a Wi-Fi camera up. They shut off the Wi-Fi before they came in. And I know they've hacked our Wi-Fi. I've seen other devices on our network before and I just had kept changing the password and changing the access key, and I don't know. A bunch of other devices were on our network at that point. And I went to the cops and tried to report it. They were completely useless. Right? Well, we don't handle that here. Now, what they don't do is go after the real threat. That's what they don't do. Right? They'd rather choke the life out of, an unarmed person who can't fight back when they are armed and loaded and have their guns and shit. But what they won't do is go after a real threat or help people who actually need help. That's a shame. And I know there are some good cops out there who do try to help people, and God bless them. God bless them for doing their job. But God damn those cowards who don't. Anyway, this video is getting too long. I'm going to cut this short. Red flag laws are not here to help innocent victims. They're not here to prevent crime. They're here to enable crime. Okay, they're here to enable criminals to continue committing the most horrific and vile and perverse crimes of all, particularly stalking. Even without the gang stalking aspect. A stalking victim is, God help them.